Welcome to Scary Production, your gateway to the most spine-chilling horror stories and unnerving tales. Dive into a world of darkness where every shadow hides a secret and every whisper tells a haunting story. From ghostly encounters to unsolved mysteries, we bring you the finest in horror content designed to keep you on the edge of your seat. Are you ready to face your fears? Subscribe now, and let the terror begin. Whispers of the Forgotten. Aditi, Priya, and Nidhi were excited to start their new chapter of life at St. Teresa's College. The college was prestigious, known for its academic rigor, and their hostel was situated in a secluded area on the outskirts of the town. The hostel itself was an old, sprawling structure, its walls steeped in history. It was a grand building with Gothic architecture, towering arches, and long corridors that seemed to echo with the whispers of forgotten secrets. The three friends were assigned to a room on the top floor, the furthest corner of the hostel. As they climbed the creaking wooden staircase, a strange feeling settled over them, but they brushed it off as nerves. Their room was spacious, with high ceilings and large windows that overlooked the dense forest surrounding the hostel. However, the room had an odd, unsettling atmosphere, as if it had been untouched for years. On their first night, while unpacking, Nidhi noticed a loose floorboard near the corner of the room. Her curiosity piqued, she pried it open and found an old, rusted key along with a fragment of paper. The paper was yellowed with age, the writing barely legible. It read, "The door that must remain closed, the secret that should not be uncovered." Aditi, ever the pragmatic one, dismissed it as a silly prank. Priya, however, felt a chill run down her spine. She was more sensitive to such things, always believing in the supernatural, and this discovery filled her with a deep sense of dread. Nidhi, on the other hand, was intrigued. She loved mysteries and couldn't resist the lure of a hidden secret. She insisted they explore and find the door the key belonged to. The next few days were uneventful, but the strange feeling in the room persisted. The girls tried to focus on their studies, but the mystery of the key gnawed at Nidhi. One evening, unable to contain her curiosity, she persuaded Aditi and Priya to explore the hostel. Priya was reluctant, but eventually, she agreed, unable to bear the thought of being left alone in the room. They waited until after curfew, sneaking out of their room and tiptoeing down the dimly lit corridors. The hostel was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant creaking of wood and the occasional rustle of leaves against the windows. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, each turn revealing more shadows and hidden corners. After what felt like hours of searching, they came across a dusty old bookshelf in the basement, partially concealed behind a tattered curtain. Something about it seemed off, and when Nidhi pressed against it, the entire shelf shifted, revealing a hidden passageway. The air was thick with dust and the musty smell of decay. The passageway led them to a door, ancient and weathered, with intricate carvings that had faded over time. With trembling hands, Nidhi inserted the rusted key into the lock. It turned with a loud, grating sound, and the door creaked open, revealing a small room. The room was dark, the only light coming from the dim flashlight Nidhi held. Inside, they found an old wooden trunk, its surface covered in dust and cobwebs. They pried it open to find strange artifacts, objects that looked ancient and unsettling. Among them was a leather-bound diary, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. The diary belonged to a girl named Rani, who had lived in the hostel decades ago. As they read through the pages, a horrifying story unfolded. Rani had been a quiet, introverted girl who kept to herself. The hostel matron, a cruel and superstitious woman, had accused Rani of witchcraft when strange occurrences began happening around the hostel. The matron claimed Rani was possessed, and in a fit of paranoia, she and some of the other staff had brutally tortured and killed Rani, burying her body in the basement. But Rani's spirit did not rest. Before her death, she had cursed the hostel and everyone who would ever live there. The diary described a ritual she had performed, a dark ritual meant to trap the souls of future residents within the hostel's walls, where they would be tormented for eternity. As they read the diary, the room grew colder, and Priya felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The air seemed to thicken, and a low, almost inaudible whisper filled the room. They quickly shut the diary and ran back to their room, but the strange occurrences escalated from that night onwards. The girls began experiencing vivid nightmares, filled with images of blood, torture, and a face that seemed to stare at them from the darkness. They heard voices, soft at first, but growing louder with each passing night. Priya, in particular, seemed to be the most affected. She claimed to hear Ronnie's voice, calling out to her, begging her to finish what was started. Aditi tried to rationalize everything, blaming stress and lack of sleep, but deep down, even she felt that something was horribly wrong. Nidhi, though shaken, was determined to end the haunting. She believed that reversing the ritual described in the diary would free Ronnie's spirit and bring peace to the hostel. Desperate, they decided to perform the ritual. They gathered in the basement, where Ronnie's body was supposedly buried. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and every creak and whisper of the wind made them jump. They followed the instructions in the diary, drawing symbols on the floor with chalk, lighting candles, and chanting the incantations. But as they began the ritual, something went terribly wrong. The temperature in the room dropped to an unbearable cold, and the candles flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. The walls seemed to close in on them, and a deafening silence filled the air, followed by a piercing scream that echoed through the corridors. Suddenly, Ronnie's spirit manifested before them, her form twisted and grotesque. Her face was a mask of rage and pain, and her eyes glowed with an unnatural light. She lashed out at them, her fury palpable. The girls screamed and tried to run, but the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. Aditi, Priya, and Nidhi were forced to confront their deepest fears. Ronnie's spirit tormented them, bringing their worst nightmares to life. Priya broke down, her mind unable to withstand the horror. She curled up in a corner, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering prayers under her breath. Aditi tried to stay calm, but the overwhelming terror was too much. She could feel her sanity slipping away with each passing second. Nidhi, despite her fear, fought back. She tried to reverse the ritual, chanting the incantations backwards, but it only seemed to make things worse. The room shook violently, and the walls began to bleed, the thick, dark liquid oozing down towards them. In a final act of desperation, Nidhi made a sacrifice, offering a drop of her own blood to appease Ronnie's spirit, but it was too late. Ronnie's curse had taken hold, and the hostel itself seemed to come alive, its walls pulsating with malevolent energy. As the room closed in on them, Priya's screams filled the air, mingling with the unearthly wails of Ronnie's spirit. Aditi and Nidhi tried to reach her, but it was as if the very walls of the hostel were pulling them apart. The floor beneath them gave way, and they were plunged into darkness, falling into an abyss with no end. When Aditi regained consciousness, she was lying in a hospital bed. She was the only one who had survived. The hostel had been sealed off, the authorities claiming it was unsafe, though they could offer no explanation for the events that had transpired. Aditi was left with the scars of that night, both physical and mental, haunted by the memories of what she had seen. The hostel was eventually abandoned, left to rot with its dark secrets buried within its walls. But Aditi knew that the curse was far from over. Ronnie's spirit was still out there, waiting, watching, and the whispers of the forgotten continued to echo through the deserted corridors of the hostel, a warning to anyone who dared to disturb its slumber. The story ends with Aditi sitting by her window, staring out at the night, her heart heavy with the knowledge that some secrets are better left buried. And as she turned off the light, a soft whisper filled the room, a voice she recognized all too well, "I'm still here."